What's going on, guys? This is Joe Tallarico, and you're listening to the Aha Moment podcast, where we find regular people who said no to playing it safe, failed along the way, and are in the middle of their grind to the top. Here's how they think when everyone else tells them no. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today with a good buddy of mine, Mr. Brandon Tobias. He is the Bulletproof Biohack Tech at the Bulletproof Labs, which just opened up. When did it open officially?
It opened up 2 Wednesdays ago.
Okay.
So, yeah, a couple weeks ago now.
Okay. So just recently opened up. So everyone, if you're in the LA, Santa Monica area, definitely check out the Bulletproof Labs. It's a lot of biohacking technology like red light therapy, theta chambers, CVAC machines. It's got everything. But thank you for coming in today, Brandon.
Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, very appreciative of it. I brought in Brandon today because I thought he's gonna have a great story to tell. I met him back last year when we were both at Bulletproof Labs, and it was just fun to hear his journey and tell everyone listening in a bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from.
Cool. Yeah, Joe, I really appreciate the chance here. So everyone listening, this is my first ever podcast. So if I sound weird, if I sound dumb, just tell Joe to edit it next time. But, I just got hired on at Bulletproof pretty recently for the second time. Joe and I worked together the first time, and it was a really fantastic experience. But before that, I grew up here in Southern California. I was a lifelong athlete. And just someone who didn't really know where they wanted to go, but just felt like there was somewhere for me to go, if that kind of makes sense. But was a college athlete, played football for about 5 years up at Portland State, and graduated with like a poli-sci degree and a philosophy minor. And I think like a lot of people these days didn't really know where to go with that or what to do with it, and you kind of graduate. And you look where to go, and you do a couple weird, kind of boring corporate jobs that you think you're supposed to do. And eventually, once I got sick of that, that's kind of how I found Bulletproof. And I kind of got a cool backstory with Bulletproof as well, but that's kind of what led me to the Bulletproof job in the first place.
Okay. I definitely want to hear what led you to Bulletproof, but before we get into that even, so poli-sci and philosophy degree. First question that automatically pops into my mind is, how does someone go from those two things to where they are now? First off, what made you choose those two, and then what made you deviate from those two?
Yeah, great questions, Joe. So I remember it was my sophomore year of college, and before I changed over to a poli-sci degree, I was a communications degree. And basically I chose communications because I love to communicate, and it kind of made sense at the time. But I wasn't really loving it, and I remember I was really focused in on football and partying and other stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing at the time.
College life.
And one day, my academic advisor came up and just said, "Look, you're 2 years in. It's time to just choose a major. And so if you want to stay with communications, great. If not, then tell me what you want to change to now. We're going to seal it in." And one thing that my dad had always told me since I was a kid was that, and I don't know why he said this, but he said, "I'd always make a great politician. I always make a great politician, right? You're good with people. You got to do something with people." And so political science had always kind of stood out to me in that way, and I thought it'd be interesting to study for the next couple of years, even though it wasn't anywhere near my passion. And so I said, screw it, I'll just go for political science. And then the philosophy thing that was more, I guess, self-developed along the way as something that I think was really the core of why I liked political science in the first place, because understanding why people do things and what we should do in the first place, and not always just following the status quo because we're told to do something, and being able to critically think about these things, I believe is one of the most important skills and educations we can have. Most people, it's funny, and not to go on a rant here, but most people look at those types of degrees and they go, "Oh, they're useless, they're not practical, go for the engineering degree and all those things." But I think that's one thing that really set me up during those years of education, those critical years, was the ability to kind of psychoanalyze not only people, but the society and the systems we're all a part of.
Yeah, you brought up an interesting point there. It's funny, what I find ironic about that is, like you were saying, on the one hand, people say, oh, those are useless. But what bothers me even more is the fact that you were 2 years in, you might have not even still been sure what it is you wanted to commit to. And the fact that, and this is just because the education system, and I have such a big beef with the education system, the fact that it was like, you need to choose something, we need to lock it in. If you don't know what you want to do, you don't know what you want to do. What good is forcing someone to enter something they have no interest in, or barely, just because they need to lock it in? I hate that. For me, my biggest beef is, and I've said this before on the podcast, that what I don't like about it is it teaches you a very fixed mindset versus a growth mindset.
Yeah.
So to reiterate, growth mindset is if you work hard enough at something, you can at least get better at it. Whereas fixed mindset is like, oh, you're either good at math or you're not good at math.
Right.
So that, and for me growing up, I was always, that's how I felt, like, oh, I'm either good at something or I'm not. And it's something I'm now trying to fix that mindset and learn that, like, I can get better at stuff. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
So then as you continued that path with poli-sci and stuff, as you started to head towards graduation, what were you thinking in terms of jobs and what your next step was?
Yeah, so I really didn't, and this is it's really interesting looking back at my mindset. So things really didn't start to shift for me until about, I think it was late junior year, and I'm going to turn my phone off here, Joe. I apologize, I got text flying in. About late junior year, when it really started to dawn on me that football wasn't going to be in my future.
Now at that time, was like, were you trying to go pro or like the next level for?
Not necessarily. I was junior year was an interesting year. Things really in all parts of my life started to turn around. Had an interesting psychedelic experience that we can talk about if you want to delve into. Kind of change things around.
Nice.
Don't know if this podcast ever goes that way, but this will be the first.
Definitely get into that.
But that junior year, so. My football actually started to really improve. That was around the time when I started to find Bulletproof, and Bulletproof was, and for those of you who don't know, Bulletproof is kind of like a lifestyle nutrition guideline, right? That tells you how to live, how to eat, and how to have the best health you can possibly have. And so I started following that blog, and it really started to change my perspective on what health, nutrition, and fitness could do for someone. And I especially started to see the results in my football and in my grades and just in the way that I thought about what my potential was. And so football started to skyrocket. I became team captain out of nowhere. My grades shot through the roof. And I really saw a good future for myself. Now, what it was I wanted to do at that point, because I was a poli-sci major, I was thinking about law school and maybe a little bit of sales, but more so law school, because I figured that that's what you were supposed to do with a poli-sci degree, and there wasn't many other options. And so long story short, it wasn't until later after I graduated when I kind of went into the health fitness kind of field.
Okay. And is that your time started how you found Bulletproof, or how did you then go from figuring out what you wanted to do from graduating college to now working at Bulletproof?
Yeah. So another great question. So after the whole initial kind of struggle with my health, which I'm sure we'll get into, and how Bulletproof kind of transformed things, and my graduation, I spent about, I'd say at least a solid 1.5 to 2 years doing all sorts of sales jobs. And so I mentioned I wanted to go in law or sales. I chose sales after I graduated because I thought it would make me more money. I thought it was good for my skill set, and I thought it would allow me to kind of live that independent, successful, just go-getter lifestyle, right? That I always saw successful people as having. And long story short, I hated it. I could not stand it.
Sales is tough. Sales is a really brutal area to go into.
It's unreal. The kind of the ironic thing though is that because of those 2 years I spent in sales, the skills I've learned from that and being rejected thousands of times are just unbelievably, like, they will last me for the rest of my life. But I still hated it while it was happening.
It's one of those necessary evils.
Exactly. Right. But yeah, so I sold uniform rental sales for a while. I sold medical devices for a little bit. I even sold Dead Sea skincare products for a little while, which was very interesting. But yeah, shortly after that, I said, all this isn't working for me, and I kind of dived back down into the core and the root of what I really wanted to do, and that's when Bulletproof came around.
Okay. And then how did you hear about the opening for Bulletproof, and how were you able to take that jump?
Yeah, so even I'm still, when I think back, it's just a really profound, shocking part of my life. I was at the company. I don't know if I'm going to mention the company's name because that's kind of offensive to them, but it was a company that sold uniform rental contracts. One of the most boring things that you can sell to people, because not only do you not want to sell those things, but people don't even want to buy them.
Oh no.
So anyways, but it was good money, so I was happy in that way. But I remember I was at a friend's house, and I was just telling him how unhappy I was, even though I was making all this money and I was, able to go out and party at the clubs with them for the first time ever, which was great. And they look at me and they go, I'm like, I've totally gained a bunch of weight. I'm healthy again. I'm falling back into my old habits. Essentially, from the inside out, I was falling apart, right? Because I just couldn't stand this anymore, and I was hanging together by a thread, just the thread that I needed to go and talk to receptionists and get rejected again and again and again. And I knew eventually that thread was going to break, right? And so my friends pointed this out to me, and they said, you are done with this, dude. Like, I know you're making more money than you ever had, and you don't have an option right now to make the same amount of money, but this is not, you can't last like this, man. I've never seen you like this. You got to figure something out. And then we started talking, and they're like, well, what about that, weren't you into that like Bulletproof thing a few years ago in college?
And at this point, how long had you been doing Bulletproof type stuff?
It was probably about 4 to 5 years at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, because I started shortly after my short sophomore year in college, and I've been following it ever since. Less so when I was like really into the sales job and all that, because it wasn't one of my priorities at the time. But they said, yeah, I mean, when you were doing all that stuff and following it, you were just so passionate and alive, and you would come and try to convert us and you would sell us, quote unquote, without even trying to sell us, right? Because you were just so passionate about it. I said, why don't you look at that? I go, okay, whatever. So that night, I think this was a Saturday night, we'd been drinking a little bit, but that night I got home and I checked my computer and I checked their website, and I hadn't checked their website in probably a year, and just happened to have a position for the lab.
That's crazy.
That had just opened up, and it was in Santa Monica, which is right nearby me. And I applied, wrote a cover letter, and here I am. So
the reason I kept asking how you got there is because I love that story, first off, because it's super relatable. I'd imagine anyone listening in can relate to that on some level. You get into a major that you're not even sure if you're passionate about, but someone or something, whether it's the guidance counselor, your parents saying you have to choose something, and you choose it, even though you may not love it. Then you end up getting into jobs you don't like. I mean, I've done that. I'm sure everyone's gotten into a job they didn't want, but they needed to pay the bills. And the bigger thing is we're all looking for that way out. And the hard part is, how do you tie what interests you into an actual job that makes money? How do you get the best of both worlds? So it was cool to hear how something that enhanced your life ended up becoming your job. But not only that, was you had your friends putting the idea and helping you get towards that, and then it ended up working out.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for someone who right now might be in your position when you were in that sales job at the peak of it, where you were like, I'm not happy here, but I'm making good money, I don't know what to do? Do you have any tips for them on how they can kind of start breaking out of that and going towards something?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely no guru here, but I guess from what I've realized, because I like I said, I'm still kind of in shock looking back at it. But I remember at the time, right after they said all that, I think it was like a week after or something that I remember telling my boss I quit.
Wow.
And I remember calling my friend at the time as I was driving home, still in uniform, and I was like, dude, I quit, I followed your advice. And it was like, what?
Did you have an epic Jerry Maguire type quit where it's like, screw you, screw you?
I wish. It was very polite and formal. And I was like, here guys, I'm sorry, but this just isn't working out for me.
Sure.
You have the most boring company on the planet.
Nice.
But I guess I'd say, as far as tips go, is that I kind of just, when I quit, what I had in mind was I started to think about the things that had impacted my life up to that point, that had caused me to have some type of real story or passion or just pain or immense pleasure or something that maybe I hadn't even thought about that I could do career-wise, that I could reach back and start to explore further. Because I think everyone has that something in their life, whether it's a hobby or something they did as a child that they were naturally good at, or something they enjoyed as a child, as a hobby, that they can look back on and say, why did I never pursue that skill or field or talent or hobby, and kind of rewind the clock and say, all this other stuff, this conditioning, the school, the parents' advice, the teacher advice, the friend's advice, all this kind of stuff that skewed my viewpoint of what I could do or what I should do, and just ignore all that, kind of wash it out of the way, like a windshield wiper, just wash all that stuff out of the way so you can see clearly again where you were or might supposed to be going. And so when I kind of quit, I said, the only reason I'm at the sales job in the first place was because it paid a great salary. And something my dad always told me was that the number one thing you should look for from a job out of college is a good salary with a good future and with good, safe, secure benefits. And I know this is, it's kind of a line that's been used a lot lately, especially in podcasts like this, but it's true. And I was, I guess, just one of the lucky ones who was able to look back and realize that, but then also had a door open pretty immediately after that, which I think that's why I'm still in shock and why it's kind of a special time in my life, because I don't know why it happened, but it happened.
I'm a big believer in, as long as you're willing to, so think of each life lesson like a chapter in your life, and obviously you got to get through the chapters to finish the book. But with these life lessons, if you don't take the time to stop and learn it, in your case, realize I'm not happy here, I need to move on, but then actually do the actionable step of moving on, which in your case was looking up the postings, you're never going to learn that lesson. And if you don't learn that lesson, you're going to be stuck in that chapter. So in your case, it would have been you just staying at the sales job, never having looked at any other opportunity, because you just would have said, because I feel like most people in your case would have said, oh, I like Bulletproof. There's not going to be a bulletproof job for me. That makes no sense. They're based, they're going to be based out of Seattle. Like, that's not near me. And everyone's so quick to think of how many excuses they can come up with versus let me just look, or let me at least just put that out there.
Right.
And it worked out for you. And I'm not saying it's going to work that quick for everyone else, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction to, all right, what's the lesson I'm learning from this, good or bad, and how can I take that moving forward? So I think that's a huge point you brought up there, and it bears repeating. Did you, growing up as a kid, did you always have that, were you always good at reflecting like that, or did you ever have a chip on your shoulder or anything like that?
Yeah, I definitely did. It's actually, so the reason I even played football, interestingly, because I think the whole reason I brought up the whole skewing of what, your own perspective and what you should and can and are supposed to be doing is because I think mine and probably a lot of people's got skewed from a really early age, specifically right around my freshman or sophomore year of high school, because I was pretty talented at football, right? Fortunately or unfortunately. And I loved certain aspects of it. I don't think I was a diehard football fan though. That's kind of funny. I never even watched football.
Oh wow!
Before freshman year, and I started playing.
That's crazy.
So I was learning the rules and all that. It was kind of ridiculous. But somehow or another, right, I kind of blossomed in my body, and I kind of had a talent for this, and I liked competing. And my coach at the time took me under his wing, and he pushed me to want to make a deal or just a goal to get a scholarship for football and go to college with it, right? And we did it. We set it in sophomore year of high school, and I was always the small, I was 190-pound defensive end, so it's good luck going to D1, buddy, with your 190-pound kind of frame there, And I remember telling my dad at the time as well, my sophomore year, and I was all excited we made this deal, and he's like, okay, yeah, but have you thought what community college you're going to go to and all this stuff? And I'll never ever forget that moment. That's when it sealed the deal. When I was like, I'm going to college on a scholarship, and I'm going to show you, right? And not that was a bad thing. I'm not saying that was a bad thing. I just think that kind of skewed or diverted my path a little bit, because I would never wanted to play professional football. I never even originally wanted to go to college for football. It was just a goal that I made with a chip on my shoulder, and ended up carrying me all the way through college, right? And so that was like my main focus all through college, instead of school or instead of business or learning about other things, right? It was football first and then school second. So I kind of forgot what your original question was here. I think it was...
No, you're still hitting it. Yeah. Like growing up, what attributes you had or were seeking that helped shape who you were today.
Okay, yeah. No, yeah. So that's totally it kind of overrode like the other attributes. So it was kind of that chip on my shoulder, got to do this no matter what kind of thing, and that's what drove me through. But if that hadn't happened, I don't know. Maybe my path would be completely different today. I have no idea.
I like to think it all played a part, because it was like you tried it for football, you had a slight interest in learning at it, or it came quick to you. That brought you to wanting to go to college, and then in college you got into those majors, and then you got into the sale. Getting to Bulletproof now never would have happened with all those other things, because wasn't it during football when you were starting to feel like crappy and not.
Yes.
So you needed to try out for football to make it, and you needed to be playing football to start feeling crappy, so that you discover Bulletproof, which eventually became your job. So it's like you needed all those things, and I stress that because, like you said, people will look at that and say, I guess it's all kind of random. I don't really see what the point of them were, but there actually is there is a method to the madness, as weird as it seems, and that's why between asking why or how you ended up at Bulletproof and what actionable step you took, and now trying to connect the dots, I say that so people listening in, when they have these, everyone's gonna have that random I'm kind of into this, let me read about this, or I'm kind of into cars, let me read about cars or cats or whatever it is, but then they won't do it, because then they, like I said, they'll automatically think, this is gonna lead anywhere, so this is a waste of time, so I won't even bother. But you're living proof that I'm kind of good at football, let me explore this, and then all the steps after that led to Bulletproof. So if you have any interest, my point is, if you have any interest, just seek it out for a little bit, just see where it leads you, because chances are, good or bad, it's going to lead you to the next step that you need to be at, and it's not going to make sense in the moment. Like you said, I'm sure when you were playing football, you never would have thought this was the trajectory you were going.
No way.
But if it's an interest, just go for it, because what else are you going to be doing? Going for a non-interest? It doesn't make sense. So that's awesome. That's really, really cool. What about, going forward now, or actually first let's get into how's your support system? We saw your friends who had your back. How was parents, brothers, sisters, were they similar to you? Did they support everything you did? Were they against it? What was the vibe?
Yeah, so always supportive, right? So I would never say anyone in my life was unsupportive. I think they just had different perspectives, and didn't really kind of know how to put my experience where it needed to go. My friends have always been in there for me. I mean, that's pretty much who I owe, the inspiration to even look for Bulletproof, right? It wasn't my audacity or courage, it was my friend's advice. So that's definitely, if it's one advice I could give, it's find a really, really good, close-knit, honest peer group and listen to them, because you definitely don't have all the answers. And even though you may not agree with their perspectives, in the time they told me, interestingly enough, I was like, come on guys, Bulletproof, really?
Which is fair, because that's what everyone else in your position would think. They'd go, guys, I know I'm interested in it, but come on, that's gonna be my job. How do I make a living off of Bulletproof? It's a lifestyle, it's not a job.
Yeah.
But they proved you wrong. They are, and it led you to this. So that's, I love that. I just love that whole aspect.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane to think about. But yeah, I mean, I guess in terms of, and if it's one thing I learned as well, it's listen to those people, right? But if it's other people who maybe, it's kind of hard to separate who you do and don't want to listen to, right? Because I would say the moment I told my dad, we mentioned the marketing thing I was into before, and that was kind of like, an entrepreneurial business type of thing. And I just remember, he was, if I even mentioned it, right? He was just super against it. Just, what are you doing? You have a degree, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your effort. But, oh my gosh, the skills and the people I met there and just the experiences I had changed my entire life. And so if I had listened to him and not gone with what, my mind was telling me to do, my instinct, my gut, then I'd just be a completely different person and probably not even half as fulfilled or happy as I can say I am today, which is pretty cool.
How did you, because I struggle with this even, you were talking about that gut feeling. How did you know whether to trust your gut versus go with what your dad was saying?
Yes, that took me a long time, because part of what I think was happening in my childhood, you asked about, people who influenced the support system of child. My dad was really influential. I mean, he was like my role model. Everything he said and did, I was so proud of him, and I just wanted to make him happy and proud, right? So when I got back from college and spending that time away from him, I realized that I'd really become a different man, different person, and our viewpoints. At that time I was really into just the self-help industry and reading and podcasts and articles and all this stuff, and he wasn't, right? And even though he was this really top executive making a ton of money, I felt like I had kept learning and chosen to be open, and he had just kind of stayed closed-minded. And for the first time I noticed finally, after all these years of just thinking he knows everything, right? It was kind of like it opened my eyes, and I'm like, holy cow, if you don't keep your mind open like that, you'll quickly surpass the perspective of other people who don't. And so once I made that realization, it was kind of like a very slow and arduous, and still going on today, kind of splitting off from that. But that was a necessary separation, right? Because if I'd stayed under that influence, I'd never made the changes today, never sought out Bulletproof or done the marketing business or anything like that. So yeah, really, really integral part.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you how long was that time span of because like you said, your dad was very influential, so I know it'd be easy for me to just be like, all right, I'm just going to go with what he says because I trust him versus my gut. Yeah. How long did it take for you to be like, I have to go with my gut on this one?
I think what really changed the game for me was just, I started slowly getting into the whole meditation thing, and I started noticing, for those of you people out there, I was a terrible meditator and all that stuff, right? But what I would notice is that there'd be certain, I guess, just feelings in my body when I would be at work or in a conversation with my dad, or having thoughts about taking the advice that my dad told me. And they weren't good feelings. They were stressful and anxious and even a little bit depressed. And so then that's kind of the baseline. Some of you have experienced that, okay, you feel an anxious feeling or a depressed feeling, but then you take that one step further and you go, okay, so why am I feeling like that? And you kind of sit down and you explore that, and you get to the root of what's causing that feeling. You go, oh, okay, that thought, that piece of advice is what's causing me this feeling. Now, why is that piece of advice causing that feeling? It's probably not very good for me. And so once I made that connection, it was super easy, because then I started noticing it immediately, and I go, okay, now I don't have to follow those types of things. I can do my own thing that doesn't make me feel like, I'm doing the wrong thing or I'm being a bad person, and I don't know when that was. I think that was probably maybe about 6 months or a year after college, when I really first came back with my dad and really kind of noticed that distinction. That's when it was really the breaking point, when I decided, okay, our paths are starting to diverge, and eventually that led to me quitting the whole sales thing altogether and going for Bulletproof. It's kind of reached its peak at that point in terms of diverging from my dad.
That's interesting. I never thought of, and I meditate as well, but I've never used it to help make any huge decisions like that, but I see how valuable that is. I guess I kind of did something similar. I wasn't necessarily meditating, but I couldn't sleep one night, and it was just me realizing, this was maybe like a year ago, where I just thought to myself, I'm just not happy. Why am I have so much to be grateful for. Why am I still unhappy? And I just have to keep, I was very blunt with myself about like why. I just kept asking why. With each why, you got through the superficial stuff. After like the first 3 whys, then you got to like the nitty gritty. And for me, it was, I'm lucky where I have a lot of friends whose advice I can listen to, but my problem is I tend to over listen to other people versus myself. Like in your situation, there's a good chance I would have listened to my dad versus my gut feeling, even though I would have felt that feeling telling me don't do this.
I see.
Just because I have trouble relying on my own confidence. We were talking about this before we started. And so this was the first time where I was just lying in bed thinking, and I realized like I'm unhappy not because of the jobs or the situation. It was because I was living my life by a set of rules that other people had given to me. And I'm never going to succeed at life living by someone else's rules, because that's rules for their life, and their life isn't mine. Where it's, no matter how similar you may think it is, it's going to be different. So the moment I realized that, it was like so obvious, but I didn't really understand or recognize it till I like said it aloud, like to myself, and I was like, oh shit. And so since then, it's been really helpful, because now I really can fine tune, and like you were saying with that meditation, I can tune in and be like, do I really want to do this, or am I just following someone because I don't trust myself? And I kind of gauge based off that. So that's really cool. I've never heard it put like that, and it's a really big helpful tip for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy, Joe. It's so cool that you had that experience as well. And the one thing I'm starting to notice, especially working at Bulletproof Labs, is that, and part of what we have is like, I guess you call it emotional awareness or emotional control as part of the stuff that we're looking to improve. And so that's one thing I've started to realize, I just wrote a blog post about this, is that most people, you talk about being reactive to their environment, or reactive starting from the very morning, right? And that's what I think this whole thing ties down to. That's what we were until we reach that point in meditation where we finally divert from having to just react to whatever the situation we've been given, and just go along with it, even though it makes us feel bad, because we're not aware of that. We're not aware that we have a different choice at that point. We're just literally on autopilot. Like there's no one behind the wheel. Our bodies, our biology is just reacting to whatever we've been programmed to react to, whether it's our dads, whether it's a teacher, coach, right, society, whatever. But then, and I think, because I don't want to, everyone talks about how meditation is this really valuable thing. Well, for stress and all that stuff, but it's in my opinion, it's different. It's allowing you literally to tap into the driver behind the wheel, and literally start to like separate that from just your autopilot like self, which is just like a robot or like a creature or an animal or something like that, if that makes sense, And so that's what, like, and I was really trying to figure out here when you asked me, what was it that allowed me to separate from my dad? It was that. It was that, like, and you hear the other woo-woo term, raising of consciousness, right? But that's what it is. I raised my consciousness, my own self-consciousness, to a level where I no longer had to listen to my dad. I could choose for myself, and I chose the path. And so, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy what we find out. That's why I love doing these interviews. We discover new stuff about ourselves.
Right.
What's like, if any, right now, do you have any like big goals set, like ultimately career-wise, what you're trying to do or what you're trying to figure out, what you'd like to get into?
Yeah. So right now, I'm with Bulletproof Labs, one of the trainers there, and I love it. I love the day-to-day stuff. I love working in a startup where you don't know what the future's going to hold. But in terms of what, I've been looking a lot into, I guess the, it's the Indians or some people, they call it the Dharma. I forget where the word comes from, but Dharma is essentially what you were put on this planet, like the purpose of your life, right? And why you're put here. And it ties into like all the events like we were talking about that happened in your past life, but in combination with your skill set. So you take essentially like what is currently happening in your life, and you combine how you can make that work with your skill set, and you work to perfect that, and you eventually, like, fate will lead you to where you're supposed to go. So right now I'm kind of realizing my dharma in terms of like, so right now I'm with Bulletproof as a trainer. I'm not meant to be a trainer, I don't think. But right now I'm meant to like perfect that profession, quote unquote, while I'm here.
That skill set.
That skill set, right? It's one of the bumps along the road. But like my dharma, what I think the skill sets I was put on here to do was to actually, I love actually speaking and teaching and writing and like traveling, and just like if I could like go and just live and travel the world and be a public speaker and just write and like inspire people and make an impact as many people as possible, that's my dream kind of goal or career or profession, what have you. And so, that's what I see myself doing. But of course, like I don't want to rush there like right now, right? Because I think that I was put at Bulletproof Labs as a trainer for a reason, and I think it's going to like play a big part in how that gets me to that future goal. It's so interesting too, because after because we worked at Bulletproof together for the first round, and we all got laid off. And you were talking about how you were working at LA Fitness and Quest and trying to find out what to do. Well, I ended up going to the Ritz-Carlton, Marina Del Rey, as a valet bellman.
Okay.
And because I just I like to stay active. I like cool cars, and it paid really well. The tips were unbelievable.
Nice.
And I spent about 6 months there until Bulletproof picked me back up again, thank God. And I thought it was just a waste of time. I thought it was like, this sucks. I'm just wiping people's butts all the time and just working for tips. It's the worst. I mean, you wouldn't believe some of the stuff we had to deal with as like bellman, because anyways. But so I get back to Bulletproof, and I was like, okay, thank God that's over. But it's so funny because Ritz was really big in teaching us like how to be really, really good at customer service, and that creates customer loyalty, to have them come back and have like experiences at the Ritz.
Especially at that level, if you were saying you were dealing with all types of weirdos or whatever, rich snobs, whatever it was. Yeah. Crazy.
Like the top tier of having to make someone have a good experience when they're so picky, like learning how to do that. So anyways, but then I get to Bulletproof, and I've somehow transferred all the customer service skills I learned that I thought would be useless into Bulletproof Labs, and it's like showing, people are like thank you, like even though like there was one guy who, I think he did the cold tip of Asper, and it was like he didn't enjoy it very much or whatever. But I had gotten him a water, and I'd gotten him a towel and everything, and I'd just been there with them, and he's like, you know what? I didn't really care for the piece of equipment, but you just made me have a good experience, so I still want to come back. And it really hit me, and it goes, that actually translated over to this job. Like, you'd never think being a valet bellman could translate to being a Bulletproof trainer, but it did.
Again, I'm going to repeat it. This is like the third time I brought it up, because I know people are going to listen and be like, oh, he got lucky with the Bulletproof job, this and that. Like, that all just worked out. But listen to how he's responding to all the questions I asked. Like, whether he realized it or not, he made sure that everything he did, he was either interested in it, so he went further in it, or if it didn't work out and it was just something he did, he got a takeaway from it. So, again, random job, valet at the Ritz. You wouldn't imagine there's going to be anything there, especially off of coming around the first round of Bulletproof Labs, and you're kind of down in the dumps like, well, what am I going to do now? And you're going to feel like you downgraded even more having to do valet when you had something so prosperous. But then that 6 months ended up being super valuable because you carried that over. So again, he went from chapter to chapter to chapter and carried everything forward. He could have just stayed home for those 6 months and done nothing. And yeah, he maybe would have still gotten the Bulletproof, but he wouldn't have had a bad experience. Who knows? He could have talked to this guy that was unhappy, not provided that kind of A-class service. And I'm just spitballing here, but the guy could have been like, oh, by the way, your worker was very unprofessional about the way things happened, or maybe you didn't handle it right, and then now you're in this weird position. So everything has its purpose. So it's very, very cool. To go back to what you were saying about your future and skill sets, there's the creator of the Dilbert comics. I don't know if you're familiar with those Dilbert, like office comics. It was on the newspapers.
Yeah.
The creator, Scott Adams, he's got a book that I highly suggest to everyone. It's one of my favorites. And his basic theory is that everyone's so worried about, like, what am I an expert at? Like, those guys are really good at basketball and they're NBA players, and this guy's a genius. Forget about that. It's going to stress you out, and hardly anyone's ever, aside from a small percentage, not everyone's good at or an expert at one specific thing. But if you can find 2 skills that you're above average at, figure out how to put those together, you will find a job that works. So what it's sounding like in your case is as you keep building the skill set, the big thing I get from you is you're really good with interpersonal relationships, and like you said, you want to speak to people. So as you keep doing these customer service jobs and even the bulletproof and everything mixed with your underlying passion for talking to people, I'm calling it now. You're going to hit some interject. I don't know what the interjection is going to be. It could be being a speaker, it could be being a coach of some sort, but you're going to figure out a way to tie those two things together because it's going to be the two skills you're above average at. And that's what I encourage everyone else to do is don't look at what you're an expert at. Where you are two things you're above average at, and go with that. So that's cool.
I love that, Joe.
Yeah,
I really love that.
Thank you. In terms of goal setting now, to get towards that, because we said now you want to do something on that level. How do you set your goals? Oh, little still accent there.
No, have you?
We're drinking. Brandon brought in some kombucha, and anyone familiar with kombucha, there's what they call the mother.
Yeah.
Inside it's like the big bacteria cloud. And anyone watching is slurped out onto the properly placed bulletproof book.
Mid podcast, we had a mother accident. Okay. And I think, Joe, I don't know if we were talking, you put this bulletproof book right here on purpose. So I thought that was well placed.
There we go. That's good spotlight. Here, I'll grab a.
Thanks, Joe.
No worries.
All right.
That's what the people want to see. They want to see the accidents.
For sure. Couldn't get any more real than this, folks.
Today's episode brought to you by Synergy Organic Kombucha. Guaranteed to spill your mother.
Joe took the trilogy flavor. I got the raspberry rush. So, what do you think so far?
I love it. I've had kombucha a handful of times.
Okay.
It's one of those things I want to drink more, but they're a little pricey. And
yeah.
I'll get there. I'll get to that point where I'm drinking it on the regular. But I do. Whenever I do have them, I love having them. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course, man.
Yeah. Where were we? So goal setting. Yeah. How are you setting the goals to get closer to that speaking or traveling or customer service?
Yeah. So where I'm at right now, it's been like a whirlwind, I think, with this new job, and there's been so much to do, so little time, and et cetera, et cetera. But I'm getting to the place where I'm slowly starting to kind of hone in, and I've let my manager and our CEO know kind of where I can see myself really benefiting the business the most. And because I think I'm an okay trainer, right? They like me there, right? People seem to be having a good time, but I don't see that's how I'm going to benefit Bulletproof Labs the most. And so where I see myself benefiting Bulletproof Labs the most is we're kind of talking about going into the business development side of things and getting this new kind of pop-up demo business going and going to all these conferences and showing Bulletproof Labs and meeting people and even speaking on stage about some of the services we offer. And so that's been just out of nowhere kind of an avenue that's popped up because I let them know that that's where my interest is at. And because I've worked hard enough as a trainer and kind of proven myself there, they're kind of going to allow that to be open, I think, to me. And so now all that's left is me to kind of like put my foot through the door and just like start pumping at it, you know what I mean? And so I'm really in a place where I'm finally in the industry I love. I'm at a good company, right, that I like doing. I have no hopes in the future. I don't know if it's gonna last, right? But it's a good enough platform to where I can start to learn all those skills. I can start to have those types of experiences that like where I want to really go. And then based off of that, then I can consider in the future how it's all going to work out for me. But right now I'm just kind of letting this platform, right, Bulletproof Labs, show me and teach me and give me the experiences I need to set myself up for the future I really want to have, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that's now I'm visualizing it all together. So just so people can see this put into action. Again, he had feeling crappy from the football that showed him bulletproof. So he needed that. That was his skill set done. He took the sales job, which he didn't like. He said he didn't like, but if he does follow this business development route of pop-ups, you're going to need that salesmanship to like talk to these different vendors and places to sell why they should have this pop-up there.
Yep.
Another skill set done. You needed to have that. the Ritz thing, customer service, me just being at labs, and even planning these events. Skill set done. Again, those are 3 incidents that you look back and say, oh, I wish I could just get rid of those 3 things because I didn't enjoy him, and fast forward to where he is now. But he needed those 3 things to get there. So look at everything as a lesson. It's going to carry over. And now knowing where you're headed in that direction now, and hearing you before talk about how you wanted to do the maybe speaking on some level, I could see that easily translating to that. Because if you're building that network of relationships, of building pop-ups, that's when you start meeting the right people who handle speaking engagements or have that other business where they're like, hey, we're looking for a guy that can really speak about whatever topic, and you'll be like, oh my God, that's my topic, I can do that. And then boom, there he is. And then we'll come back again and say, working at Bulletproof, skill needed to get to now his dream job. So I have a feeling this is going to work out perfectly for you. I don't know the exact timeline, and that's what you just got to trust the process, but you're definitely on the right path. That's awesome.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. I hope so. It seems to be, but you never know. Life throws you a curveball sometimes.
Sure. I think you'll be ready for it, though. Now, what about days where, because I'm sure you have them, days that just don't go the way they plan? Like you said, curveballs are going to happen. Let's say a curveball does happen. How do you get past those days, or what can you suggest to people to get past those days?
There was definitely some, we didn't really talk about it, but there was some dark days, like just in between the Bulletproof, and I think it was actually like when Bulletproof went down, and then before I got the Rich job, where I was really just in a dark place, because that was my everything. I put my whole hope and soul into that.
I remember seeing you. We had all, just real quick, Bulletproof, we were all part of the staff the first run through, but there was, building permits was hard. Santa Monica was hard to build in. Yeah. And so we all kind of were let go just because it was behind, and they were going to re-up it later. But it was hard for all of us because we all had kind of put all our chips into that basket and were ready for it. And when it let us go, we all had met a couple weeks later. I remember seeing you, and I could just tell you were down in the dumps, you were hoping that it was going to pull through, and you were asking oh, is he going to come back soon? And we all thought no, it's going to take a year and a half, 2 years for it to come back. And you stuck it through, which is good, but keep going, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. You're absolutely right. I remember that meeting. And so that was right before I'd hit the dumps. Still
on the decline.
My hopes were still high at that meeting, but
we probably brought it down and we're like, no, Brandon, it's going to be 2 years, and all of a sudden you just see his face go, wait, what? Oh.
I think it was shortly after that meeting I called Amy, and I was at the beach. I called Amy, and I was just I just wanted to hear it from her to be sure, and she told me the same thing, and that's when I had kind of closure about, dude, you got to move on, man. And
let's get into that though, because I kind of want to hear that dark period of, because we're all going to go through that. How did you whatever you feel comfortable with? What were you thinking, and how did you get past that? Because that's super relatable.
One thing, so you saw it right at that point. I think it was 2 weeks after we shut down. Yeah. I was still clinging onto it. Okay, so I remember telling Amy too. It was like a relationship gone bad, right? I was still clinging on there and just having hope it would all work out. And I called Amy. For those of you who don't know, Amy was our VP of retail at Bulletproof, and really big involvement with labs. And so her and I had got a pretty close relationship. So I gave her a call and just talked to her for about an hour, and she gave me closure, right? And she's like, it's not happening, and I can't guarantee you're gonna have a job, blah blah blah. And it hurt a lot, okay? Just like any bad relationship, but
again, for anyone who thought that this Bulletproof job came easy, it didn't. He definitely had to earn that one.
This is, we're talking about the Bulletproof that I had been studying, and it was my life passion for 4 or 5 years, and it was the thing that was going to get me out of the whole sales career thing that I was unhappy with, and it was my way out, right? It was the thing I was going to do for the rest of my life, right? I put all of my chips, so to speak, in the pot there. So when I shut down within 3 months of working there, obviously I was pretty devastated. But talking to Amy, she gave me good closure. Okay, hurt for a long time, but the biggest thing I can tell people is that I just had to take it at that point. There was no point in just prolonging the hope and just, you know, being unrealistic about it. I was just like, I'm moving on. And the biggest thing I took away from that was that never, you know, like it's okay to be passionate about something, but you should never just have all of your chips in one basket like I did. I mean, I was all in on Bulletproof, man, and I thought it was invincible. You know, I thought it was this magical ship that was just never going to go afloat or never going to sink, and it sunk on us, you know, and so I was kind of shipwrecked there. But I was like, you know what? Yeah, I love this industry. I'm passionate about it, but I'm not going to be all in on Bulletproof in the future if it does work out, you know. And I moved on at that point, and when I was at the Ritz, I was looking for other stuff in the industry. I remember I applied to a few different health supplement companies and this kind of thing. Nothing really panned out, and then Bulletproof came back along. But that was kind of the pain period we were talking about, where I was really so down in the dumps, so hurt, so lost, so just depressed, because I didn't think that I was ever going to find anything like this again. Because, you know, kind of really short background on me, I had football experience. I was a college football player, but, you know, no degrees in kinesiology like Joe here, no nutrition background, no personal training experience, none of the qualifications you'd expect or need from, you know, a Bulletproof trainer essentially. So I thought I was screwed, right? And so, but anyways, I accepted it. I went through the pain period. I learned the lesson of not being all in on any one thing, no matter what it is. But to keep on forging on. And so I was at the Ritz. I kept looking for stuff, and Bulletproof came back around. But this time around, even though I love the company, I think it's a great platform for me. Dude, my options are open. You know, sure. I'm not limited to a Bulletproof for life kind of thing like it was before. It gave me an opportunity. That's one of the things that happened at the Ritz, fortunately, was it gave me an opportunity, because I wasn't really caring about my work so much, to delve really deep into myself and to really look at if I wanted to go with the health nutrition, what I wanted to do in that field, what I could see myself doing. And so that established where I wanted to go, and that didn't involve being, you know, a Bulletproof fanboy for the rest of my life, you know, essentially. So if that kind of answers your question.
That's perfect.
Yeah,
that was really perfect. And I think we all need to kind of, for those of us trying to figure out what we're trying to do, we all need to kind of hit that, unfortunately, down in the dumps, because because I think we're all naturally stubborn, right? We all want the success quick. So we're all going to blind ourselves to it. But what we really need, for those of us who don't know what we want to do, is we need to kind of be down in the dumps, so that we were forced to just like, all right, dude, if you're not going to learn your lesson, I'm going to put you there, whatever force that may be. And now you have to think about, like, what do you want to do with your life, and how are you going to do it? Because you put it all in this basket and it didn't work out. So what's your plan now? Yeah. So it's cool how that kind of brings that out of you and forces you to see the better side of yourself, and realize, like you said, that you can't put it all on one side, and that there's more to life.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Absolutely.
Given that, kind of tailing off that, what would you think in general, or maybe in the jobs you've had, is something you think people spend way too much time focusing on that's a waste of their time?
That's an interesting question. I think I have a good answer for it, though, and that is building up, staying at jobs or doing certifications or certain skills that they don't really love, but they think they need to do to build up, quote unquote, their resume, to find a good job. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to, or who they go, you know, but is that going to build your resume? How's that going to look on your resume? You know, or leaving after, I think it was 4 months at that uniform rental company, you know, how's that going to affect your resume? You're never going to get a job again. You know, people are going to look at that and they're going to be da da da. And I'll tell you this. So I've been through, I graduated in 2015. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty young. And since then, I've been through 5 jobs.
Wow.
5 jobs.
Yeah, job a year.
In 2 years.
Sorry, 2 years. Yeah. There goes my math.
5 jobs, okay? And, you know, and so that gives an average of each job, like, I think, pretty bad. Like 4 or 5 months maybe, if that. But in my opinion, it hasn't affected me in the least. In fact, it's benefited me, because I was able to go into the industries, realize that I really hated it, but still pick up the skills. Like when I was there, even though I hated it, I still tried and I still learned as much as I could before leaving. But when I realized like I'm not gonna freaking last year, that's when I got out. So anyways, still stayed long enough to pick up some of the essential skills, but left before I started to really like become depressed and like become one of those people who just don't care about life instead of just their job, you know what I mean? Like, you know, those people who have just been in a job for 20 years and just...
They got so comfortable they don't even try to look outside.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
They're just set with that.
Yeah.
And they become like pessimistic, bad human beings because of that, and it's sad. But anyways, so before I became one of those guys, and but it hasn't affected me in the least, you know? I've just... As long as, like, with the Bulletproof thing, you know, yes, it was very lucky that it panned out, but they didn't really care so much about my resume as much as, one, the cover letter I sent in, and the interview that I had, which was just honest, telling them my story. You know, the story I had in regards to Bulletproof was I guess, powerful enough and genuine enough that they said, look, we'll give this guy a chance. And that was it. That was the opportunity that it gave me. But if it's any one thing that I see people doing, especially, you know, millennials and people coming out of college these days, thinking that they have to stay at a job for 1-2 years that they hate, because not just because of the money, but because of their resume, I think it's a total myth. I think it's a total waste of time, and I think you should spend more time on, like, I know Joe probably talks about a lot, developing yourself, learning how to kind of explore yourself. Part of the biggest thing out of college is like, that's benefited me is being able to actually take the time and put the effort in discovering who I am and what I can and cannot do, skill-wise and passion-wise. So it's more time doing that than just like grinding away at the 9-to-5 to put it on your resume and show off for future, you know, quote-unquote future employers that you may never even get to experience. So
the former president of Quest and kind of my unofficial mentor, he's now host of Impact Theory podcast. Let's check that out. One of the most important things he told me was, and this goes along with what you were saying, the moment you're at a job that doesn't serve your goal or stops teaching you skills to take forward, you need to leave that job because it's not serving you anymore. Yeah. And it's like you said, people fall into it. They're doing the same job 20 years and they don't even like it. If you like it, it's one thing, but if it's not serving you, move on. And people really need to learn how to do it. And it's hard. I'm not trying to say that that's easy, but it starts with recognizing it and going back to that kind of meditation talk you were talking about, or in my case, lying in the bed and reflecting on why you're not happy and not being afraid to take the steps to initiate that change.
Yeah, for sure.
The final question I like to end this on, it's the mind action gap, and it might even kind of have been answered already. So the mind action gap, I see it as, let's say, in your case, I want to be a biohack tech, to actually doing it. People love to talk about their dreams, but then they never follow through with it. They get so satisfied with just talking about it. What's one actionable step you can suggest to them to go for it?
Yeah, I think this is a very, it's different for everyone, right? So I'm sure you're getting a lot of really good perspectives on this question. But for me personally, what really allowed me to take action steps is taking the time to be sure of something before taking that step. So for instance, if I were to just, you know, let's say I was at that company that I really hated and I was just like, had a bunch of thoughts like, oh, I shouldn't be here, I should be doing something else or looking at something, I would never have actually taken the time and step to do it, because it was just like a random thought. It could be a wrong miscellaneous thought, it could be, you know, just a temporary mood or something like that. But once I took the time to A, listen to my friends, and B, like explore myself and explore my own like feelings about what I was doing, what I should be doing, and like explore my own skill set and what my past events and how that's impacted me today. Once I explored all that and I found out like it was really a good idea to actually quit that job and move forward, once I was sure about that because of the self-exploration I had done, everything became easy. It was easy to go, right? It sounds crazy, but it was easy to go and just quit that job out of nowhere because I was sure of it. It wasn't like, even though it, you know, looking back, it does seem kind of crazy, like I was taking a big chance. At the time, it didn't seem like that. It seemed like I was just doing the right thing because I found the answer. And so if it's any, kind of advice that I would give to people to take that next step and move forward, and not just think about it, it's really take some time for self-exploration and delve in on a question. I mean, I'm not just saying like sit there for 10 minutes and just like ask yourself the question. No, I'm saying like lay in your bed and just like think, like be silent and just think about that, and think about how it makes you feel, and think about everything that's happened in your life, and think about all the things you love doing and your skills and all those types of things, and then compare it to what you're doing now and how happy or what do you feel now, and just dive even in deep to yourself, right? And you will know, like you'll be sure about it. And now here's the thing though, is once you do come up with that, once you are sure about that, now you really got to take the step, because yes, it's become easier. Now it's still, hard to take that step, but it's much, much easier once you're sure about it, if that kind of makes sense. I know that was a long-winded answer, but does that kind of make sense?
No, it was perfect. That was exactly what they need to hear, I think.
Okay, cool.
Social media handles, anything they can reach you at?
So yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is in the future I plan on having a place to find me and my work, whatever that may be, but for now I just got to rep Bulletproof Labs, so
yeah, make sure. I said at the beginning, I believe, but again, if you're in the LA area, if you're going to be, it's on Main Street in Santa Monica at the Bulletproof Labs. You can go see Brandon in person, ask him all the questions you want about his life, and try out the different biohacking technologies there that help kind of clarify what he was even talking about, to help clear your mind and stuff. So
yeah, we got, for those of you who might be interested in the LA area, we got free mini hacks to give out. Okay, so if you come by, right, you can schedule a free tour of the facility, and then you get one free mini hack, whether that's a ride in the virtual float tank or cryotherapy. We're giving out free cryotherapy sessions, or something we call the cheat machine for really, really quick muscle building. Giving out free mini hacks, right, trying to spread the word about it. Really exciting stuff happening. Our goal is to optimize really upgrade people's state of being, whether it's in your mind, your mental clarity, your physical well-being, or your emotional. And so we're the world's first comprehensive human upgrade center, first ever of its kind in California, possibly even the world. So Santa Monica, California, come on by. I'll be training there. And if you want to set something up, you can email me at brandon@bulletprooflabs.com. And brandon@bulletprooflabs.com, and we can set you up with an appointment and a free mini hack. So
there you have it. Brandon, thank you for coming in, man.
Thank you, Joe.
Yeah. And I'll be sure to link towards the Bulletproof Labs and Brandon as well. Thanks again for coming in, man.
Thanks,
I think it's a super relatable story, and people are really going to be able to get some good advice from it.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it.